I'm going to say I'm Lynn Morris, and you're going to say
And I'm Dr. Mary Byrne.
Dr. Mary Byrne. And I'm going to say, yes, you are.
And I'm going to say, welcome back.
Yeah. It's good to be back. I don't know how many weeks I've missed, but way too many.
5 or 6. Yeah, it doesn't, you just do what you have to do.
Yep.
4, 3, 2. You're going to see yourself come up.
Good morning, everyone out there. Welcome to Changing Times. It is Wednesday, July 24th. We are live at the Axe Media Group headquarters in Springfield, Missouri. We have got a great show today, and I want you to pay attention. This is going to be all about Alzheimer's. It's an update on Alzheimer's. We got a brand new drug. I am Lynn Morris.
And I'm Dr. Mary Byrne.
Yes, you are. I tell you what, and we've got a great show today. This is extremely important. There's a lot of people that have dementia or Alzheimer's, and we're going to talk about it.
And a lot of families taking care of their loved ones.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
and it's a lot of money, and it just really shortens people's lives and changes people's lives, and there's no cure, but we do have a new drug we're going to be talking about today. Our special guest today is Marcia Rawerdink, and Marcia has been an advocate, I think, would you say, about 16 years. She's an educator goes around all over the Southwest Missouri area and talks about Alzheimer's and gives everybody good information on what to look for, early causes, early symptoms, things like that. So I think we'll just go ahead and get started, okay? And so the first thing I think that, and appreciate Marcia sent us an outline that Mary and I have, but I think we just need to get started and a little bit of an intro and definition first, and then we're going to kind of go down through this outline. I know people will pay attention. There may be, you may want to write some things down, have some pencil and paper ready, because there's some really pertinent information that Marcia's going to share today.
Could you tell us a little bit how you got interested in this so that our audience understands and kind of connects
Sure.
with a personal experience?
This is very personal. My mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 1998. She was a teacher, and she was very, very bright, very intelligent, and very, very independent. So when she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's back then, and I went through what I call the journey with her for 7 or 8 years until she died in December of 2005. And so partly because she was a teacher, and along that journey, one of the things that I learned was there was a very serious lack of education, a serious lack of understanding of this disease, a serious lack of awareness. And if you turn the clock back, you can remember that, since then, we've had several famous people come forward and go public about having Alzheimer's, which has been a real blessing, because if you go back 20 years, we still talked about it as hardening of the arteries and, oh, you're just under stress, and hide the crazy aunt in the attic, and don't talk about it.
I remember those years.
We have to talk about it, because there's a whole bunch of reasons. I'm going to talk about some of those reasons, but we have to talk about it. People have to be aware. They have to be educated. They have to understand what they're going to be facing. And so that's how I got into this.
Well, you and I, we've talked about it before, Marcia. We've worked together on several projects with
Yes.
Alzheimer's, and my mother also had Alzheimer's and died with Alzheimer's at age 94.
Bless her heart.
And very quickly, I think the one thing that was so impressed on my mind, I still think about it all the time, is moms were always the best cooks. There was nobody that cooked better dinner than moms back then, and then for family gatherings when we had our whole family, just all the food that my mother could make. But towards the middle to the end of her life before I had to put her in a nursing home, she would walk into her kitchen and she would look around, but she got to the point where she could not even make a cup of coffee
Right.
or a piece of toast. And here was that lady that could make everything, So, but I know my mother, and I think you'll probably talk about this. A lot of people, I think when my mother first discovered, probably before we did, she tried to hide it. So she didn't probably understand what was going on. And then once she started knowing that something really was going on, she tried to keep us from knowing about it.
Yes.
And that's when we started seeing some checks being printed out but never got mailed, different things like that that would not be a normal thing of her life.
Yeah. And that's very common.
Yeah. All right, so we'll go ahead and start just kind of a little definition and
Yep.
whatever you want to talk about.
I like to start with definitions because there are misunderstandings about a couple of key terms. And the first two that are the most key terms are dementia and Alzheimer's. Those two terms tend to get used interchangeably, and that's not correct. Dementia, think about it in terms of a very large umbrella, and there are several types of dementia. Alzheimer's is just one type of dementia, and it is, however, the most common.
Marcia, can I interject here for our audience, just so you know? Marcia is an ambassador for the Alzheimer's Association. Can you tell them a little bit about your background so that they understand they're getting credible evidence or credible information here?
Yes. First of all, I'll start with just saying I was a scientist by training before I retired. And once you have gone through the journey of having a loved one with Alzheimer's, because I am by nature a learner, and when my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, when I recognized that's what it was very quickly. I began to read every book on the subject that I possibly could.
You use all of your background and skills
Yes.
to address the needs of your loved one.
It helped me to be a learner.
Yes.
Because I was swallowing up books and information like crazy, because I wanted to understand, what am I dealing with? What do I need to expect? What do I need to prepare for? When do I need to prepare for that? And how can I help? What behaviors do I need to keep an eye out for, etc. Now, the other little snippet of information is my mother was living in Wisconsin. I was living in Connecticut.
Oh.
So I was doing what they call long-distance caregiving. And so for about 5 years, I flew back and forth from Connecticut to Wisconsin at least every 2 weeks. The fortunate thing was that I had built sufficient credibility at my workplace that my managers gave me free rein to do what I needed to do. My manager said, in fact, one time, she goes, "You do what you need to do. I know that you know what you have to do in a week. I know what you have to do this week, and I know you'll get it done. So you go do what you have to do."
Oh,
so
bless her heart.
yeah, it was wonderful to have somebody like that to report to. So I started out by volunteering and saying, "Hey, look, I can't stuff envelopes because I have a full-time job." So some of the first things I did was to manage booths at health fairs, things like that. Then I started going to Jefferson City and started learning about legislative priorities and some of the priorities that Lynn was working on with seniors and veterans. And along the way, of course, then 4 years later, they asked me to step up to the federal level. and of course, spending my time meeting with legislators both in the district office and with legislators in Washington, D.C., and understanding all of our legislative priorities really pushed that learning process and really gave me a huge opportunity. So now every 3 months, we have a research webinar. I attend every single one of those so that I keep up to speed. And then there was a process we had to go through to become qualified, certified as a community educator. So I went through that process. So it's been a lot, and thank goodness I'm a learner.
Yeah, God pushes you into areas
Yeah.
you like never thought of
Absolutely.
for yourself.
When I accepted the position of ambassador for Missouri District 7, I had no idea how much I was going to learn about politics. That wasn't the reason I went into it.
That's right.
The reason I went into
hear
it.
ya.
The reason I went into it was in order to advocate for our legislative priorities. But in that process, I learned so much about what happens in Washington, what happens in Jefferson City, and how to leverage our position on our priorities in order to push them through Congress.
It's pretty amazing when you're just living your life day to day, how you're insulated from this awareness that
Yes.
the government has some kind of power or influence over everything you do.
Yes.
And if you are not involved, then you are a victim.
Yes,
That's-
yes, exactly. And we have learned how not to be a victim.
And we have learned. That's right. And we encourage other people to learn.
Yes.
That's right.
And that's why I do the community education piece of it,
Yes.
as well as the legislative piece of it, so that we can learn. So I'm going to back up. So dementia, think of it as the big umbrella. Alzheimer's is just one type of dementia. And it is the most common type of dementia. It's about 2/3 of the cases of dementia. But there are other types of dementia: vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, frontotemporal lobe dementia, and Huntington's disease, and something that we've discovered in the last 10 years is more common than we knew, which is another type of dementia called mixed dementia, where someone has more than one type of dementia at the same time. And I knew a lovely woman from St. Louis. She was a college professor, and she ended up having mixed dementia. She had not only Alzheimer's, but she also had Lewy body dementia on top of it.
So what we're talking about is when you think of dementia, you think of memory loss and brain function, but there's actually motor skills involved
Yes.
in that. And so Lewy body and
Lewy body is, that's one of the indicators that it may be Lewy body.
the motor.
Is the motor skills. You may see the motor skill loss before you actually trigger in on the memory loss.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on. And we have therapies and treatments
Yeah, and I want to talk about that because those are, in fact, two distinctive categories that people kind of use those terms a little loosey-goosey as well. We have had therapies for treating symptoms of the disease for several years. One of the very first ones back in 1996 was Aricept, and there are still people today who are on Aricept to help it. It helps address memory loss in many people. Now, just like certain medications, it works for some people, it may not work for other people. But Aricept was one of the first. And then there have been a series. Namenda came out in 2003. But when I talk about therapies, they treat symptoms. They don't treat the mechanism of the disease itself. The good news was that last year there was a new therapy that came out that, Rexulti, that was the first time we had a therapy to address the symptoms of hallucination. And if you have lived with someone or are caretaking for someone who has hallucinations, it's really horrible. My mother did have hallucinations, and it wasn't fun. But so we now have a therapy for hallucinations, and the medical profession, the researchers in this field are continuing to actively look for therapies that will help address some of the behavioral symptoms, the aggression, etc., in addition to finding ways to sort of try to slow the memory loss, which was the original purpose of Aricept. So the difference between therapies address the symptoms. I'm going to talk about treatments like in a minute. Treatments now is a word that for the first time in the last 2 years we're actually using, because a treatment now addresses the actual mechanism of what's happening in the brain that causes Alzheimer's.
And that mechanism is?
That mechanism is what we know today, because we're learning a lot. What we know today is that in people with Alzheimer's, you can see in it's called a PET scan, or you can see it in cerebrospinal fluid, that there is a buildup of what are called beta amyloid plaques. And that's one type of protein, and then there's another type of protein called tau tangles. So you'll hear the two terms, amyloid and tau. And those two proteins, what they do is as they build up in the brain, they cause the hundreds of thousands of neurons in the brain to not be able to communicate with each other, because they're like these gummy substances. And now the neurons can't talk to each other. And when the neurons can't talk to each other, this is when the memory loss starts.
Right.
And you can actually see the difference between the amyloid plaque and the tau tangles if you get a PET scan, a correct PET scan, I'll say, and that's another whole story. You can see the amount of amyloid plaque and the tau tangles, as opposed to a normal brain where there would be very minimal amyloid plaque or very minimal tau tangles. And the other way that this can be picked up is a spinal tap, which I know a lot of people get the shivers when they think about that. But if you have a spinal tap, a qualified physician can also look at the cerebrospinal fluid, and they can see the amount of amyloid and the amount of tau that's in the cerebrospinal fluid. And so that is really, those are sort of the two main, that's the mechanism that causes the memory loss. And at the same time that's all happening, there are actually death of brain cells, and the brain starts shrinking, and you can see that in a scan as well.
I'm going to go out on a limb, and I don't mean to put you in a uncomfortable position, but I'm just curious, because I'm a learner too. What is it about age that triggers this increased production of these proteins?
I'm going to answer that two ways.
Oh, good. You have an answer.
The first one is amyloid plaque is the accumulation of amyloid plaque is just something that does happen with age.
Okay.
So it's over time.
Over time.
Yeah.
And, but when I say I'm going to answer that two ways, what we don't know, and we're still researching, is why
Right.
Some people accumulate more amyloid plaque than others, and some accumulate next to none at all. There are a lot of studies going on right now, longitudinal studies, in some cases where people may have signed up for one of these studies when they were 20 or 25, and they carry that study out until they're 60, 65, 85, whatever. This is one of the places, artificial intelligence scares me to death, but this is one of those places where AI could be a savior. Because if you think, so what these longitudinal studies do is they collect reams of information about your life. Where were you born? How did you grow up? What was your education? What was the education of your parents? What kind of diet were you on? What was your level of education? What kind of a lifestyle did you live? Did you get married? Did you get pregnant? Did you have every other question under the sun? And when you think about those reams of data, a human being would not be able to go through those millions of pieces of data in a lifetime and do a correlation on what are the things they have in common. But this is one, if we can shove those millions of pieces of data into a computer, artificial intelligence may be able to pop out those 3 correlating factors in an hour. So that's one place where I think AI is going to really be very, very helpful. But we don't know why some people accumulate amyloid or tau at a greater rate than others. We do know there are lifestyle factors. I did a presentation on this on Lynn's show. There are lifestyle factors that do affect it, however. And I'm going to pick the most obvious one, which is sleep.
Oh, I would have picked diet. Sleep.
Sleep. What happens, this is the simplest way I know how to explain it. What happens is at night, when you sleep, your brain does cleanup work. We never think about that.
That's right.
Most people
Because
don't
we're sleeping.
We're sleeping. And most people don't even know your brain is doing cleanup work at night when you're sleeping. People who brag about not needing a lot of sleep, if they come and talk to me, I tell them you're very foolish. Because what you're not allowing to happen is you're not allowing the brain enough time to put the trash out to the curb. And so I got the question on Friday, how much sleep should I be getting? And that answer is as variable as human beings, right? But the researchers who study all this stuff will tell you that they recommend a minimum of 6 hours. And then beyond that, some people need 8, some people need 10, some people need 11. That's totally up to you. But one of the things that's very, very important about this is whatever that sleep amount that you need is, to the extent that can be uninterrupted sleep. That's the key, uninterrupted. So if you have a dog that wakes you up every 45 minutes, put the dog in a kennel, lock him out of the bedroom. Some people need a totally dark room. Some people need to sleep with the TV on. Some people need a nightlight. Some people need the room cold. Some people need the room warm. But you have to figure out whatever are the factors that contribute to you getting the most uninterrupted sleep, because your brain does do a serious job of cleanup while you're sleeping. So we know that that's a factor.
Yeah. I know there's a recommendation that you don't eat a certain number of hours before you go to sleep if you want to do weight loss. But if I have to choose between weight loss and uninterrupted sleep, I'm going to take that snack before I go to bed.
Yes.
Little cookie and milk never hurt anybody.
That doesn't hurt. That's absolutely
and
fine.
Especially the milk.
Yeah.
If it helps
especially
you
the
to
milk.
sleep,
If it helps you to sleep.
do it.
In fact, I took a half a glass of milk this morning at about 3:45 because I was having trouble. And
Yeah.
usually that does it for me.
That's right. You know, another trick is to take your calcium tablet. If you're taking calcium,
Yep.
take your calcium tablet before you go to sleep.
Yep.
Because that is another, you might say, it has a sedative effect.
Yeah. And people just, they have to kind of look at themselves
Mhm.
and understand what works for them and then apply that. And so I throw sleep out there because it is really important that you let your brain put the garbage out.
Now, can we talk about diet?
I'm a food scientist by training, so we can talk
Bless
about
your
diet
heart.
all day.
Yeah. No, but that's another. If we're going to talk about preventative measures, or if you're going to, I'm excited about this new drug intervention you're going to talk about.
Yeah.
But if you want to approach your health from all angles, then diet is one of them.
Diet is one of them. Challenging yourself is another.
Yes, reading,
Reading,
playing strategy games,
Um,
exercise.
taking a class.
That's right.
Um,
Staying engaged.
Yeah, staying engaged, staying socially engaged. I always tell people as they get older, stay close to your friends, no matter what that takes. Even if it needs to become a virtual call once a month, stay close to your friends, because staying engaged is really, really important. A little fact that came out during the Alzheimer's International Conference last year from a study that they did was that individuals over 65 who volunteer regularly have a significantly lower incidence of dementia than people over 65 who have retired and are not volunteering.
Right.
And that's all about social engagement and learning. So, interesting little things. So, yes.
We should all be okay.
Well,
Well, I'm
yeah.
not saying everybody's 65, but you're not.
Oh, bless
But-
your
but-
heart.
But you know what? We're all okay. We're going to be okay.
That's right. Because
when I heard
You're okay.
when I heard
So-
the result of that study, I went, woo!
Yeah.
I almost jumped up.
Yeah.
Well, and there's plenty of need for volunteers.
Yes,
That's
lots.
the thing. You
And
should
it
never-
doesn't matter whether you do what Marcia's doing or what you're doing, or whether you're just pushing wheelchairs at Mercy Hospital. You're staying engaged with people.
Right.
You're
Right.
getting out of the house. You're not sitting on the couch watching soap operas all day by yourself.
That's right.
Because the other thing that we know is isolation is a killer.
Yes.
So it's very important to stay socially engaged. Where am I? Cognitive decline. I need to talk about this just because it's important to understand that cognitive decline and the path to Alzheimer's, if you will, is a continuum. You start to accumulate amyloid plaque and tau about 20 years before you start to exhibit symptoms of memory loss. Time goes by, some individuals then start to demonstrate symptoms of what we call MCI, mild cognitive impairment. And those are the, what day is it today? I came home, I can't find my keys, but it's not memory loss that impacts your daily life.
I'll give you an example. My sister's husband and my sister were furnishing a new house, and they went and bought appliances for the house. And her husband asked, "So what room does the stove go in?" And that was her first
clue.
realization.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, those are those little indications that something's starting to go on. Now, the important thing to understand about mild cognitive impairment is it does not mean that you're going to get Alzheimer's. A lot of people stay in the phase of mild cognitive impairment for the rest of their life. However, a lot of people do continue to move from mild cognitive impairment to what we call early stage, and then middle stage, and then late stage, and of course, late stage is ultimately fatal at this point in time. Why? We don't know yet. One of the things, it's another one of those mysteries that we continue to throw a lot of research against to understand how come some people stay in mild cognitive impairment and don't move on to the next phase. So I wanted to talk about the continuum just because I'm going to refer to the stages when I talk about these drugs. So, any other questions about?
No, let's talk about the new drug. You know, I was in the hospital in July having surgery, 2 surgeries, and I heard it on the news one night while I was watching TV, this 10 o'clock news. I hear, well, we got a new drug for Alzheimer's,
Yep.
and I thought, oh, I got to call Marcia. And so that's probably the most promising drug,
Yes,
right?
right, so far.
So far.
So I'm just going to give very, very quick history. 2.5 years ago, we had what we called our very first treatment. It was a drug called Aduhelm. That drug happened to be quite controversial. And when I say controversial, there was disagreement among researchers and doctors about how rigorous the clinical trial had been. The good news is, very shortly after that, here comes a drug called lecanemab, which is now has a brand name of Leqembi. And Leqembi is a drug that was developed by Eisai and Biogen. And Leqembi received standard FDA approval on July 6th of 2003. And that date will stay in my head for the rest of my life, because that was a fantastic day. There was no conflict, there was no doctor disagreement about the result of the phase 3 clinical trial. The results were very clear, so there was no controversy about that drug. Now, someone earlier had mentioned side effects, and yes, every drug has side effects. I don't care whether it's a blood pressure drug or an anxiety drug or a HIV cocktail, there are side effects. But the side effects in this particular case were so minuscule that it easily passed the FDA safety guidelines. Now, that drug was demonstrated in the phase 3 clinical trial to reduce the amount of amyloid plaque in the brain in 20% of the individuals who took it versus placebo. The only controversy on that is that some doctors say, well, you know what, if it's only a 1 in 5 chance that it's going to reduce amyloid plaque, I don't think it's worth it. Now, if you have mild cognitive impairment or early stage Alzheimer's, and you would like your quality of life, you would like a chance of your quality of life to be 6 months longer, 3 years longer, that's a conversation between you and your doctor. And, you know, this is Marcia's personal opinion. I don't think that, the powers that be, if you will, have any business making that decision for you.
For your life.
Ex-
Another consideration that an individual who is thinking about taking these prescriptions is that the drugs are dealing with indicators in the brain.
Yes.
That are may be correlated to behaviors.
Yes.
And so you can have a reduction in these little protein networks, you may not see that
Right.
manifest in your behaviors.
Right, and that was one of the things that was, I'll call it a small gap on the lecanemab trial. Now, here's the good news. We'll move to the new drug that just got approved last month. Standard approval by the FDA, again, passed all of the safety issues. It's a drug called lecanemab, and it's now known, or it has a brand name now of Kinsella. So you'll hear that word. Now, don't even ask me where Kinsella came from. I haven't researched it yet.
The marketing department.
Yeah, marketing department. But the really cool thing about lecanemab is that the results of the phase 3 clinical study, which was done on about 1,700 people, indicated that not only did it reduce the amount of amyloid in the brain by 70% in the individuals who took it versus placebo, which is a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. But in addition, they also did a cognitive behavior correlation. And they were actually able to demonstrate an improvement in cognitive ability. Now, somebody asked me again the other day, does that mean you get your memory back? No, I'm sorry. We're not there yet. But if I can slow that memory loss down significantly, and I can maintain my quality of life, stay home longer,
Self-help
self-help,
and affect. That's another part
yes,
of it. Your
I'm-
emotions.
I'm all in, right? And so we're very, very excited about this drug because it is significantly more effective than its predecessor.
Okay.
And Aduhelm, the very first one, is actually going to be taken off the market in November. Lecanemab will still be out there. Lecanemab will still will be there. It's the newest one. Now, the status of lecanemab right now, if you walk into your doctor and go, I want a prescription for lecanemab, Kinsella, they're not going to be able to help you today. Because what's happening now that we're in this treatment phase, which is very exciting. On the one hand, yes, it's unfortunate, but it's also very exciting, is now that the treatments are coming, the infrastructure has to catch up. So we have to get more PET scans installed. We have to get more doctors trained on these drugs. One of the other things that is different about lecanemab is that this is still a infusion. You have to go to a clinic and sit in a chair and drip, drip, drip.
But less often than...
Less often than lecanemab. Yeah, well, lecanemab was every 2 weeks. Lecanemab is once a month. And so the Eli Lilly, who is was the inventor of lecanemab, is very busy right now in the process of producing as much lecanemab as they can, as fast as they can. So like I said, the infrastructure, now that we have standard approval, the infrastructure has to catch up. And so to that extent, I wanted to talk about the importance of early diagnosis.
Hey,
And
Marcia, let's
stop me and
yeah,
interrupt.
I'm going to talk about our sponsors real quick.
Please do that.
But I want to tell.
And I'll switch my cheat
I want
sheets
to
here.
tell the listeners too. You know, cost is a big factor.
Huge.
And being a pharmacist, I always had a lot of questions about the cost of medication.
And will insurance cover it?
And will insurance cover it? And insurance pretty well controls healthcare today. A 12-month cost on an average depends on what insurance company you have or whether you have insurance or not, but it's about a $32,000 cost on our new medication. That's a lot of money for anybody.
Well, and if we're talking people over 65, you're talking
yeah,
Medicare.
Medicare,
Does
and that's
Medicare-
why we want to make sure the government doesn't cut Medicare benefits as we all continue to get older, because as we get older, we take more medicine, it seems like. But anyway, I just thought cost was interesting.
It is.
But I do want to talk about our two great sponsors. The first sponsor that we've had for several years, I had him for 7 years when I had my radio show too, was Brad Pistow. He's a certified fiduciary financial planner located right in Ozark, Missouri. And he is absolutely one of the best, not just in the state of Missouri, but in the country. He goes all around the country giving talks. He's written a couple of books. The first one called Safe Money Matters, #1 best-selling book on Amazon for retirement planning. And then his second book that came out last year was Bulletproof. Both of those books are best-selling books. You can get those books free by just calling 417-581-9222. 417-581-9222, and Lisa will answer the phone and just tell her that you saw this ad on our show, Changing Times, and they'll send you information. He's licensed only in 3 states, okay? But he has friends, business associates in the other 47 states. I can guarantee you that the type of financial planning he does for retirement living will make sure that you run out of life before you run out of money. And I think we're all worried about that. We're all worried about, well, what if I run out of money before I run out of my life? Well, no one wants that. That's a big worry. But the kind of plan that we have, Janet and I have through Brad Pistow, many of my friends have, and my family members have Brad Pistow. He is definitely the person that you want to talk to. Located right in Ozark, Missouri. But he's a contributor for USA Today, Wall Street, everything else. He is really the guy for financial planning. Our second sponsor that I've also had on my radio show, as well as this show for 4 years, is Springfield Nissan, Springfield Kia. Used to be called Youngblood Motors. And that is John Whittaker. Used to be his buddy, John Youngblood, but John retired. And my last 2 cars I bought from these guys. I'll be buying my 3rd car from them. And they sell new cars on one side of South Campbell, and they sell used cars. And the thing that I like about them, they sell a lot of certified used cars. Now, that costs a little bit more than a used car, but the certification, making sure they go through 110 points to make sure that that car is going to drive down that road for lots of miles before anything goes wrong, is really probably worth it. And so they have a great 48-hour guarantee where they'll deliver the car to your driveway. You can use it over the weekend, put the wife in the front seat, kids in the back, put the dog in there, everything you need to do, drive that car around. And if you don't like that car, they'll bring you another car. They are about the only company I know of that does something like that. So I highly recommend them. Their phone number is 417-882-3838. 417-882-3838. Another great person is going to answer that phone. Her name is Susan. I pay attention at my age. She is a consummate customer service person. She absolutely has the best voice, friendly voice, and always gets the message to the right people. So that's who you're going to deal with, Springfield Nissan, Springfield Kia, Brad Pistow. Be sure and go there and let them know that Changing Times recommended them. Okay, now we're going to go back to our next topic.
I'm just going to follow up really quickly on talking about the cost, because the cost is really, really important. A year ago, after when lecanemab was becoming commercially available, CMS Medicare made the decision that they were not going to cover this class of medications. And by this class of medications, these 2 new treatments are both called monoclonal antibodies.
Mm-hmm.
Monoclonal antibody is an antibody, but it's instead of the natural antibodies in your system, these are actually designed, man-made antibodies. And they're designed to specifically attack the amyloid plaque in the brain. And when CMS made that announcement that they were not going to cover that class of medication, first of all, you can imagine those of us who have been working on this for 15, 16, 20 years were pretty up in arms. And the reason we were was this is the first time in history that CMS Medicare has declined to cover a drug approved by the FDA. They have never, ever, ever before declined a drug approved by the FDA, no matter how expensive. And I think you both know, and your viewers know, some of the cancer drugs, some of the HIV drugs are even more expensive than the drugs
Sure.
that we're talking about.
Yeah, the
here.
New York Times reported this was $32,000 for
Yes.
monthly doses, 12
So-
monthly doses.
So what happened was in 2023, Marshall was one of 1,000 people marching and protesting in Lafayette Park across from the White House, protesting the CMS decision. And fortunately, we had 100 senators like Susan Collins who were out there saying this is unacceptable. We had hundreds of legislators sign letters to CMS. We had hearings with CMS with people who have early stage Alzheimer's and were begging the CMS secretary to reconsider their decision. And about 2 weeks after the standard approval on July 6th, CMS agreed to cover monoclonal antibodies. And so hopefully we're past that. So if you are on Medicare, CMS Medicare will cover it. The struggle that we're having right now the most is private insurers who usually follow CMS Medicare's lead on this stuff are being a little bit slower on the uptake. And so we still have that battle to try to fight. But anyway, we won the war with Medicare.
Hey, Marcia, that's why Dr. Mary Byrne does what she does, that's what I do, that's why you want to be active.
Yes.
You know, if you all had sat back and not gone up to
And
D.C.
said, "Oh, well, we can't do
and did that rally and got all those senators and congressmen and women to do what they're supposed to do and help, you might not be covered today.
Exactly.
Well,
And
and
so-
legislators don't know what the departments are doing.
Yeah. So you're educating people, you're showing your support. That's really good. We're going to run out of time. Mr. Producer, how much time do we have left?
Kind of out.
We're kind of running out of time. So here's the deal. We didn't really get to what I think is also extremely important, and that's just trying to figure out the different things that you want to watch out for, and because I think that's really important. And we're going to have you back and talk about, and we could spend the entire
The
time
signposts.
just what do you look for?
Yes.
You know,
What do you look
because,
for? And I'd love to spend some time talking about how important early diagnosis
yeah,
is.
I think
because it's
that's the key.
critical.
I think that's the key. You wait too long, and you know, I know it's like my mother. And I know I told you that. I think over on the phone is when my mother first realized herself that something's going on. She didn't tell anybody, you know, and finally we started seeing it. You know, we started seeing it, and but a lot of people hide it. They hide it from their doctor. I remember my mom used to always say this to me. When we'd take her to the doctor, it wasn't about Alzheimer's, it was about something else. I'd say, now, Mom, tell the doctor all your symptoms. And tell them what you're worried about, what you're thinking, okay? And she would say, kind of laugh at me and say, well, that's what the doctor's job is to figure out what's wrong with you. And I said, well, Mom, I said, the doctor's kind of like a detective. He needs clues. And so you really need to help the doctor. But my mom would just laugh and just sit in the front seat of the car when I drive her to the doctor. And she'd say, well, I'm not going to help him. He's got all that schooling, and he should know. And I said, no, help him. So anyway, I think a lot of people, I don't think my mom was the only one that's like that.
Oh,
So-
no, not at all.
so I think that's it. But anyway, I tell you what, really great information today. I'm glad to be back. Dr. Mary Byrne, thank
glad
you.
to have you back.
Thanks for
We're
covering
both
for
glad to have
me
you
all
back.
this time. I tell you what, I was gone for several weeks and had a little hiccup on my health and got bit by brown recluse spiders. So watch out for those spiders. They're everywhere. Every home has brown recluse spiders, and every business has them, and you just don't want to get bit by them, because I was one of the unlucky ones that was highly allergic to it. But and again, every disease is that way. Everything that you have to do with health, the quicker you know what's wrong with you,
Yes.
and the sooner you go to the doctor. Had I gone to the doctor 2 weeks earlier, I might not have lost my foot. And so that's just the way it is, you know. And so you learn how critical it is. We just didn't know it was a brown recluse spider at that time.
Yeah.
But just go to the doctor. Don't postpone any type of illness, but especially this, because they don't really have a lot of good treatment, therapy, drugs for later on.
Right.
As it gets to a certain point, there's no turning back.
Yeah.
So if you want to start early on, then you can retard and slow that down
Yes.
to where you can have a more normal life
Yes,
for a lot longer.
yes.
And that's really important.
Yeah, and
So-
we're thrilled at we're thrilled at where we are right now, and we have really pumped up the research dollars, and so I'm looking for more really great things.
All right, very good. Well, we will be back next Wednesday, same time, 9 a.m., and we'll have another great guest. Thank you, Marcia. You are
Thanks for having
you are a
me.
difference maker, and obviously Mary's a difference maker, and even Dennis, our volunteer producer, is a difference maker. I know all the things that he does in life. So we'll be back next Wednesday. Everyone have a great rest of
And
the week.
oneness is what we're made of. One nation under God, it's plain to see. We're showing the whole world what a country should be. You